When James discovers his wife Lisa's secret affair with a charming co-worker, his world crumbles. Fueled by heartbreak and rage, he orchestrates the ultimate public revenge, exposing her lies in front of her colleagues at a prestigious company gala. But what begins as a calculated act of justice spirals into an unforeseen tragedy, leaving James to grapple with the devastating aftermath. In seeking to destroy her deception, he uncovers the painful truth about love, betrayal, and the cost of vengeance. This is a gripping tale of revenge gone too far, where no one escapes unscathed. Marriage is supposed to be built on trust. At least, that's what I believed for the 10 years Lisa and I were together. From the outside, we had what most people would call a perfect life. A cozy suburban home, successful careers, the kind of relationship where we still made time for date nights despite the grind of daily life. People would say things like, "You and Lisa are couple goals." And, for a long time, I thought they were right. But lately, something had changed. It started small, subtle enough that I almost didn't notice. Lisa was suddenly working late more often than usual, though she assured me it was because her company was going through a big merger. I wanted to believe her, so I did. Then there was her phone. She'd always been the type to leave it lying around, but now it was glued to her hand, locked with a password I didn't recognize. She'd smile at a text and tilt the screen away from me, saying it was just work stuff. When I asked her about it, she'd brush it off with a kiss and say, "Don't worry so much, babe." I ignored it at first. I told myself that I was being paranoid. Lisa loved me, she'd never give me a reason to doubt her. But that little voice in the back of my head wouldn't shut up. It kept nagging me, whispering doubts, planting seeds of suspicion. Then one night, the whisper turned into a roar. It was a Thursday evening, one of the nights Lisa claimed she'd be working late. I had planned to make dinner for us, something special, steak, mashed potatoes, her favorite red wine. But when she called at the last minute to say she wouldn't be home until after midnight, the unease I'd been trying to suppress finally bubbled to the surface. She sounded distracted on the phone, almost guilty. And when I asked what was keeping her so late, there was a hesitation in her voice before she replied, "Meetings. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was, actually. Meetings until midnight? And why did her tone feel off? Something wasn't adding up. That's when I made the decision that changed everything. The next morning, Lisa was already gone by the time I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter, something generic about a breakfast meeting. Her phone wasn't there, of course, but her laptop was. I stared at it for what felt like hours, battling with myself. I had never invaded Lisa's privacy before. The thought of snooping made me feel slimy, like I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But then I thought about the way she'd been acting lately, the secrets, the late nights, the shift in her behavior. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My hands were shaking as I opened her laptop. Her email was still logged in, and for a moment, I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything, and I was just being paranoid? But then I saw it. An email chain with someone named Mark. My stomach dropped as I read the subject line, "Last night was amazing." My vision blurred as I clicked into the messages, scanning through the exchange. Mark wasn't just a coworker or a friend, he was her lover. The emails were explicit, filled with inside jokes, flirtatious banter, and vivid details about their nights together. There were mentions of hotel rooms, secret rendezvous, and how thrilling it was to keep their affair hidden. I sat there, stunned, my heart pounding in my chest. This couldn't be real. This wasn't the Lisa I knew. The Lisa I married was kind, loyal, honest. She would never do this to me. But the evidence was right in front of me, staring me in the face. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw her laptop across the room and let it shatter into a million pieces. But I didn't. Instead, I closed the laptop, set it back exactly where I found it, and sat there in silence, trying to process what I had just learned. When Lisa came home that evening, she was all smiles, acting like everything was fine. She kissed me on the cheek, asked how my day was, and didn't seem to notice the storm brewing inside me. I played along, forcing a smile, pretending everything was normal. But inside, I was seething. Over the next few days, I kept digging. If Lisa was going to lie to me, I wanted to know the full extent of her betrayal. I went through her credit card statements, her social media, even her calendar. What I found only confirmed what I had already seen in her emails: dinners at expensive restaurants, hotel reservations for two, events she claimed were work functions, but were actually excuses to spend time with Mark. Every discovery felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe how easily she had fooled me, how naive I had been to trust her. But the more I uncovered, the more my anger shifted. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. Lisa thought she could play me for a fool, that I'd never notice, that I'd sit at home like a loyal puppy while she ran around with another man. She thought she could get away with it. But she was wrong. If she wanted to play games, I was more than ready. And I was going to make sure she never saw it coming. I didn't confront Lisa right away. That would have been too easy for her. Yelling, crying, asking her why she did it, all of that would have given her control of the situation. She would have spun it, made excuses, maybe even tried to blame me. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. I wanted her to hurt like I was hurting. But first, I needed to know everything. My first move was to confirm who Mark was. From her emails and social media, I pieced together that he worked at the same company as Lisa. He wasn't her boss, thankfully, that would have been a whole other level of humiliation, but he was part of her department. Someone she worked closely with. He was a couple of years younger than me, with the kind of face that screamed office charmer. Slick smile, gym body, expensive suits. The kind of guy who thought he was God's gift to women. I hated him immediately. It didn't take long to find his Instagram. Lisa had been careful not to interact with him on social media, but he wasn't nearly as cautious. His account was public, filled with photos of overpriced cocktails, rooftop parties, and gym selfies. But what caught my attention most were the captions. He had a way of being vague yet suggestive, writing things like "midnight escapades in the city" and "nothing beats forbidden fruit." I felt sick scrolling through his posts, imagining Lisa at the other end of the camera. Was she the one taking those pictures? Was she the "forbidden fruit" he was bragging about? My stomach churned, but I kept digging. I wasn't just looking for evidence anymore, I was building a plan. The first step was surveillance. I knew it sounded extreme, but I didn't care. I needed proof, real, undeniable proof of their affair. So I bought a small GPS tracker online and attached it to Lisa's car one morning while she was in the shower. It was easier than I thought, and when she drove off to work that day, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. That night, when she claimed to be staying late at the office again, I checked the tracker. Sure enough, her car wasn't at her office. It was parked outside a boutique hotel downtown. I sat in my car across the street from the hotel, my fists clenched around the steering wheel. I didn't need to go inside to know what was happening. She was with him. I could picture it so clearly, the way she'd smile at him, the way she probably laughed at his stupid jokes, the way she looked at him the same way she used to look at me. I wanted to storm inside, barge into their room, and catch them in the act. But I stopped myself. That wasn't the kind of revenge I wanted. I didn't just want to ruin one night for Lisa. I wanted to ruin her entire illusion of control. So instead, I drove home and started planning my next move. The following week, Lisa had a big event coming up, a gala for her company that she'd been organizing for months. It was the kind of event where everyone in her professional circle would be there, her bosses, her colleagues, clients, and, of course, Mark. She'd been begging me to attend, saying it was important for us to show a united front. The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. I told her I'd come. For the next few days, I focused on gathering as much ammunition as possible. I went back to her laptop, this time taking screenshots of her emails with Mark. I downloaded their entire text thread from her cloud backup, which she'd forgotten to log out of on our shared iPad. The messages were even worse than I expected, graphic, shameless, and full of mocking comments about me. "Does he suspect anything?" Mark had asked in one message. "Not a clue," Lisa replied. "He's too trusting. Too trusting." The words burned in my mind, fueling my determination. I also created a fake Instagram account. It was a simple setup, a professional-looking profile of a young woman interested in marketing and networking. I sent Mark a follow request and, within hours, he accepted. From there, I started messaging him. "Hi Mark, I saw your profile and thought we had some mutual connections. I'd love to pick your brain about your work in marketing." He took the bait immediately, responding with, "Always happy to help a fellow marketing professional." Over the next few days, I kept up the act, sending flirty messages and asking questions about his work. It didn't take long for him to brag about his relationship with Lisa. He didn't mention her by name, he wasn't that stupid, but he said enough for me to know he was talking about her. "She's married," he admitted in one message. But that just makes it more exciting. By the time the night of the gala arrived, I had everything I needed. Lisa spent the entire afternoon getting ready, curling her hair, perfecting her makeup, and asking for my opinion on her dress. I told her she looked stunning, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. I loved this woman once, hell, I still did, in a way. But the woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone who could smile in my face while lying through her teeth. At the gala, Lisa was in her element. She greeted guests, shook hands with her bosses, and introduced me to her colleagues like we were the perfect couple. Mark was there too, of course, though he kept his distance. I caught him looking at Lisa a few times, and each time, my blood boiled. Halfway through the evening, Lisa excused herself to check on the catering. I knew exactly where she was going. I slipped away a few minutes later and found her in a back hallway, whispering to Mark. She was smiling, touching his arm, her eyes lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in years. They didn't see me, but I saw them. And that was all I needed. I went back to the main room and waited for the moment Lisa had been looking forward to all night, her big speech. She'd been talking about it for weeks, rehearsing in front of me, telling me how important it was to her career. When she took the stage, she looked radiant, confident, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. The room was quiet as Lisa adjusted the microphone. She scanned the audience with a practiced smile, exuding poise and charisma. She looked like the picture of a successful, devoted wife. But I knew better. Every word she had rehearsed, every ounce of confidence she displayed, was built on a foundation of lies. And tonight, those lies were about to come crashing down. As she started her speech, I couldn't help but marvel at her audacity. She talked about teamwork, integrity, and the importance of building trust with clients, words that now felt like a cruel joke. I kept my face calm, blending into the sea of politely attentive faces, but inside, I was counting down the seconds until her world unraveled. I waited until she was in the middle of a sentence, her voice carrying through the room with practiced ease. That's when I pressed the button. The projector screen behind her flickered to life. At first, it displayed the company logo, as planned. But a few seconds later, the real show began. The first image was a screenshot of one of her text messages to Mark. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel alive in a way he never could." The room went silent. Lisa didn't notice at first, her back was to the screen. But the murmurs from the audience quickly grew louder. "Is this part of the presentation?" someone whispered nearby. "No. What is this? Lisa stopped mid-sentence, her brow furrowing as she turned to glance at the screen. The moment her eyes landed on the message, her face drained of color. She froze, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. I didn't stop there. The next slide appeared, a photo of Mark and Lisa at the boutique hotel, his arm wrapped around her waist, both of them smiling like lovesick teenagers. Gasps rippled through the room. Some people had already pulled out their phones, recording the scene as it unfolded. "Is that Mark?" one of Lisa's colleagues muttered in disbelief. "Yes, it is," another whispered, her tone dripping with shock and judgment. Lisa spun around to face me, her eyes wide with panic. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her voice low enough that only I could hear. I stood up from my seat, deliberately slow, letting the moment stretch. Every eye in the room was on us now. "What am I doing?" I said, my voice calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm showing everyone the truth, Lisa. You know, the truth you've been hiding while you were sneaking around with him." I pointed toward Mark, who was frozen in place near the back of the room, his face ashen. Lisa's mouth moved, but no words came out. Another slide appeared on the screen, this one a particularly damning message from Mark. "I can't believe how easy it is to fool him. He has no idea, does he?" A collective murmur swept through the crowd. Some people looked horrified, others amused, and a few downright gleeful at the unfolding drama. I could see Lisa's boss whispering furiously to the person next to him, his expression a mixture of shock and disappointment. "Stop this," Lisa pleaded, her voice cracking. "Why should I?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You weren't thinking about stopping when you were sending those messages, were you? Or when you were sneaking off to hotels? Or when you were laughing at how trusting I was? This is what you wanted, right? To have your secrets out in the open." Her hands were trembling now, and tears welled in her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered all the times I'd doubted myself, all the nights I'd stayed awake wondering if I was imagining things, if I was being too paranoid or insecure. I remembered the texts, the hotel reservations, the smug way Mark had bragged about her behind my back. And any sympathy I might have felt evaporated. "This isn't the place for this," she stammered, trying to regain some semblance of control. "Oh, I think it's the perfect place," I said. "After all, you wanted me to come here tonight to support you, didn't you? Well, here I am." Mark, who had been trying to shrink into the shadows, finally spoke up. "Hey, man, this is between you and Lisa. Leave me out of it." The sheer audacity of his words made me laugh, a bitter, humorless sound that echoed through the room. "Between me and Lisa? Oh no, Mark, you're very much a part of this. In fact, let's give everyone a round of applause for Mark here." I gestured toward him, and a few people in the crowd actually clapped, though it was more out of awkwardness than enthusiasm. Mark's face turned bright red, and he muttered something under his breath before bolting for the door. The room was in chaos now. Lisa's co-workers were whispering and staring, her boss looked like he wanted to sink into the floor, and Lisa herself stood frozen on the stage, her mascara smudged from tears she was trying, and failing, to hold back. For a moment, I just stood there, taking it all in. This was the moment I had been planning for, the moment Lisa realized that the perfect life she tried to fake was over. "I'll be filing for divorce," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "And just so you know, I've already spoken to a lawyer. He says judges don't look too kindly on infidelity, especially when there's this much evidence." I gestured toward the screen, which was still displaying one of their messages. Lisa's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, she didn't have anything to say. I turned and walked out, leaving her to deal with the wreckage she'd created. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't carrying the weight of her lies. She had made her choices, and now, she was living with the consequences. In the days following the gala, I expected chaos. I had braced myself for Lisa's desperate attempts to contact me, for apologies, tears, maybe even anger. But instead, there was silence. It was eerie. Almost too quiet. I moved out of the house the day after the gala. It was strange packing up the life we had built together, piece by piece, as if our entire marriage could be condensed into a series of boxes. But there was something satisfying about leaving her behind, walking away from the lies and betrayal. Lisa didn't come home that night, nor did she the next day. Part of me assumed she was staying with Mark. Maybe they were plotting their next move, or maybe their relationship had already fallen apart under the weight of public humiliation. Either way, I didn't care. Or at least, that's what I told myself. The truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about her. As angry as I was, there was a part of me that still felt connected to her. 10 years of memories don't just disappear overnight. I thought about the woman I fell in love with, the one who used to light up when we talked about our future, who used to laugh at my dumb jokes, who used to hold my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Had she ever really loved me? Or was it all a lie? A week passed, then two. The divorce papers were drawn up, and I had my lawyer send them to Lisa's office. I figured that would force her to reach out, if only to discuss the logistics of dividing our assets. But still, nothing. No calls. No texts. I convinced myself I didn't care. I threw myself into work, spent time with friends, even started going to the gym. I told myself I was moving on, that I was better off without her. But the silence nagged at me. Then, one night, I got a call that changed everything. It was a Friday evening. I was sitting on my couch, flipping mindlessly through Netflix, when my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but something told me to answer. Hello? Is this James? The voice on the other end was a woman's, calm, professional, but with an undertone of unease. Yes, who's this? This is Officer Martinez with the local police department. I'm calling about Lisa. Lisa Carter. My heart stopped. What about her? There was a pause, and then the officer said the words that made my stomach drop. She's been found deceased. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. What? That doesn't make any sense. There must be some mistake. I'm very sorry, Mr. Carter. Her body was discovered earlier this evening in her car, parked near the old bridge outside of town. We believe it was an intentional overdose. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. I sat there, numb, unable to process what I was hearing. An overdose? I managed to choke out. Yes, the officer said gently. There were empty bottles of pills in the car and a note addressed to you. To me. I hung up shortly after that, the officer's voice fading into a dull hum in my ears. The room felt like it was spinning, and for a moment, I thought I might be sick. Lisa was gone. Dead. And it was my name on the last words she ever wrote. The next day, I went to the station to pick up the note. The officer handed it to me in a sealed evidence bag, her face a mixture of pity and professionalism. I took it home, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the envelope for what felt like hours before I finally worked up the courage to open it. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, loopy, feminine, familiar. James. I'm sorry for everything. I never meant for things to get this far. I know you'll never believe me, but I did love you. I still love you. I just lost myself somewhere along the way, and I didn't know how to come back. You were right to expose me. I deserved it. But I can't live with the shame, knowing I destroyed the one good thing I had in my life. Please don't blame yourself for what I've done. This was my choice. I hope you find happiness someday, the kind of happiness I couldn't give you. You deserve that much. Goodbye. Lisa. The letter fell from my hands, landing softly on the table. I sat there, staring at nothing, as her words echoed in my mind. I had wanted revenge. I had wanted her to feel the pain she'd caused me, to understand the depth of her betrayal. And she had. But this? This wasn't what I wanted. The image of her at the gala flashed in my mind, her tear-streaked face, the way she had looked at me with a mixture of fear and desperation. I had been so focused on my own pain that I hadn't considered hers. What if she had been struggling long before the affair? What if Mark had been an escape, a symptom of something deeper, something I never saw? I thought exposing her would set me free, that it would heal the wound she'd left in my heart. But now, all I felt was emptiness. The weeks that followed were a blur. I attended her funeral, standing at the back of the crowd as her family wept over her casket. They didn't know the full story, and I didn't have the heart to tell them. To them, she was a beloved daughter, sister, friend. I couldn't bring myself to speak to anyone. Not her parents, not her friends, not even my own family. What could I say? That I was the one who pushed her to this. That my need for vengeance had driven her to the edge. The guilt ate at me, day and night. I replayed every moment in my mind, every choice I'd made, every word I'd said. I had thought revenge would give me closure. But instead, it had left me with a gaping hole I didn't know how to fill. In the end, I realized the saddest truth of all: there are no winners in revenge. Just broken hearts, shattered lives, and an endless stream of what-ifs. Lisa was gone. And I would carry the weight of that forever.